Hello, my name is Yasmin and welcome to Eryal TV. I'm here with Dr. Jillian Creasy. You used to be a local city councillor at Broome Hall and you're a retired GP. Basically, at the moment, you're working with Sheffield Community Contact Tracers, which is slightly different to NHS Track and Trace?
Yes, it is. Yeah, basically the Community Contact Tracers set themselves up because they weren't happy with what the NHS Test and Trace does.
So what is it that you guys are doing differently to
Okay, so the Test and Trace, you may remember when COVID first came along, the government was doing a lot of testing.
Yeah.
But that testing was really people ill in hospital. And they stopped testing in the community at all. So people who got COVID, they had the symptoms, they might get better, they might go into a hospital, but we didn't know for sure if they had it. And then towards the end of lockdown, it wasn't well into April, that they brought out this testing. So what happens if you think you've got COVID and you get a test, if that test comes back positive, you will be contacted by the NHS Test and Trace service, which is a national service, and they will contact you and tell you to isolate yourself so you don't spread it to anybody else. So you're supposed to isolate for 7 days from when you first have your symptoms. But also it's important to contact the people who you've been in touch with because you might have spread it to them. So those people need to isolate for 2 weeks. So the question for the government was, how do we set this thing up? To let people know that they've had a positive test, they need to isolate, and we need to contact their contacts. And we feel that they went about that in completely the wrong way. Okay. So the first thing is that it's a national system. So when you have the positive test, it goes through to a call centre. So it's nobody local, nobody that you know, they probably don't speak your language. It's just not personal at all. You get this phone call out of the blue.
Yeah.
The other thing that is there are two other main things that are a problem with it. One is it's quite difficult to get a test. We can talk about that later. But you don't just go to your GP and get a test. You have to go online, you have to go by car to the nearest testing centre, or you get it sent to you. It's really quite complicated to get a test. And if you do get a test, sometimes it'll come back positive if you've got the COVID, but quite a lot of the tests come back negative. They're what they call false negatives. So if you're relying on the testing in order to trace the contacts and ask people to isolate, they reckon about 30%, 3 in 10, are going to come back negative when somebody's actually had the disease. So you're missing a whole load of people. And then another problem with it is it takes a long time for the test to come back.
How long, roughly?
Well, if you get COVID, you think you've got the symptoms, it might take you a day or 2 days to get the test, to book it, or if you get it sent to your home, you can get a little specimen sample sent to your home. It might take a couple of days to get it sent, then you do it, then you send it off, and it might take 2 days, especially if it's a weekend and it's got to go in the post. So it might be 3-4 days after you've got the symptoms before you learn it's positive.
And by then you've probably been in contact with a lot of people.
Indeed, you've passed it on to a lot of people. So then another problem is that it's this national anonymous system. And actually what they do is they email you. They email you or they text you. And they say, go online and fill out all your contacts. So, how many people are going to do that? They're feeling poorly, they're feeling frightened.
Yeah. Also the language barrier. A lot of people don't use the internet, so it's not easily accessible to those people, is it?
Yeah. So we felt, there were massive problems with that system. And when you listen to the figures, in the news, you hear that actually they're not managing to contact many of the people who've got the illness. And it's really, really important, because if you want to sort of nip it in the bud, you know, if there's a little outbreak here, a little outbreak there, you have to contact those people quickly, tell them to isolate, and then quickly contact their friends and neighbours and the people they've been in touch with. So what the Sheffield Community Contact Tracers did was say, well, let's have a look at just contacting people even before they've had the test. You know, they think they're poorly, they've got a cough, they've got a fever, they've been in touch with somebody who they think might have been affected. So that's enough for us to be saying, sounds like you've got COVID, you need to be isolating yourself. So let's catch them early on.
Rather than giving them 5 days to roam around and pass it on to other people.
Indeed, yes, exactly. And then the other thing is, let's make sure that people who contact them are, you know, people from Sheffield, and ideally people from their own community who can speak their language and, you know, understand what sort of problem. Okay, so a kind of another aspect of what we're trying to do with the community contact tracers is to offer people support. So if I'm going to phone somebody up and ask them to isolate, they might say to me, well, how can I do that? You know, like, I've got to go out to work, or I won't have any money coming in. Or, you know, I've got to go and visit my dad. You know, he's relying on me to take him food. Or I've got to care for my kids. Or maybe, stupid thing, I have to walk my dog. Or I live on my own, and how am I going to get my food if I can't go to the shop? So what the community contact tracers do is they're in touch with a community organisation. So in this area it would be Ishraq, you know, that is doing a lot of support for Somali people.
Broomhall,
so Broomhall area, or Sharrow, they're doing a lot from Shipshape. And you've probably got, I don't know if you've got mutual aid places in Grimesthorpe.
I think our closest would be Pittsmore, but I'm not sure. I don't really.
So they've got organisations there that would offer support. So the community contact tracers would say, well, you know, can I phone your local mutual aid for you and get them to come and deliver some shopping? Okay, so you've got problems with your employer, like maybe we can get some advice for that. Like, here's the number for Citizens Advice, so you can get your rights in terms of your work and your benefits and all that. So it's really offering that support. If you're going to ask people to isolate, you don't just ask them to isolate and track their contacts. But you talk to all those people and say, come on, so what's difficult for you? How can we help you?
So with the NHS, they've got the test and trace, and you guys have got this Sheffield Community Contact Tracing. What is the difference? What would you say are the main difference?
Okay, so the government is a national system, whereas we're local. It's using local volunteers. The government service depends on you having a positive test. So you don't get into the system unless you've got a positive test.
So you guys don't need a positive test?
No, we'll talk to people even if they just think they've got COVID. And we think it's really important to pick people up as quickly as possible, not wait till they've got a test. And you mentioned earlier on, like, obviously there's that support afterwards. So that's a really important bit of it as well, that, you know, rather than just you get a message from some unknown call centre on your phone or an email, what we're doing is phoning people up, asking them to isolate themselves, and then asking them what would help you isolate. Tell us who your contacts are, we'll phone them. How can we support them? Whether that is, you know, practical support, doing the shopping, emotional support, giving them a ring each day, make sure they're okay.
Is that something that NHS is not offering, or are you guys just doing a better job at basically supporting?
It's not offering it at all, I would say.
So no, if I was to say to you, I'm by myself, I need to go get my food and I can't isolate, who's going to get me food? Is that something that NHS would not basically help me with?
They wouldn't
just tell
at
me
all,
to isolate.
no. So what you would get, if you have a positive test and that goes through to the national test and trace system, what you will get is an email or a text on your phone or if they can't get through, they might try and phone you. And the most support that you will get is they will put you in touch with a local phone number. And in Sheffield, that would be, there is an advice centre based at the council. Okay. So they'll give you the council number. And fair enough, you could phone that and they'll put you in touch with mutual aid or, you know, a local voluntary group that is helping. Yeah. But it's not going to be somebody holding your hand and checking that you've got that support and you're okay.
Would you say, because they don't offer that support, people are more likely to just go about their day and say, you know, I'm not going to isolate because I need to go get my shopping, I need to go check on my dad?
That's exactly the point, that, you know, that the system is delayed because it's difficult to get the test. The test may be negative when actually you have got COVID, a lot of false negatives. Yeah. And you don't get the support. And, you know, we think it's really important to have all those things in place. To ask people to do something which is really hard.
It is.
You know, to stay indoors for 2 weeks and to get all your contacts to stay indoors for 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's very difficult.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask is, with the NHS, do they offer different languages, or are you just going to get a call from someone who...
Do you know, I don't honestly know the answer to that. Okay. If I think they do have a translation facility if they get as far as phoning. Okay. And they have got a system where it's a call handler deals with it initially, and if they run into trouble they can refer it to a kind of higher level of somebody who could call on interpreters or whatever. But really an awful lot of people are falling by the wayside because they never get the test in the first place, or they don't answer their phone, or they don't go online and fill in all their contacts.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience, my mum doesn't really, like, because her English is not that great, she won't go on a website. It's in English, so it honestly doesn't make sense to her, so there's no point of her going on that website, or she wouldn't even understand if she did. So I guess your way is a better way of doing it because it's more personal, and you can kind of get people who understand her to help her out.
So really, you know, what we're hoping to do is to reach out into communities, you know, through friends and neighbours, through the community groups, through the mosques, you know, whatever's appropriate, to reach out to people and say, if you think you've got COVID, you know, by all means get the test and go through that system. But also, you know, while you're waiting to get your test and waiting to be contacted by National Test and Trace, the NHS system, you know, do contact us and we'll support you while you're going through this. And we want to kind of get that message out to people to say, you know, there's another way that is based on communities helping each other, really.
That's great. This is just a general question about COVID-19. I've read a lot about it being quite high in the ethnic minority areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and you know, I've been reading the medical journals about it, thinking, you know, what is going on here? Yeah. And some of it is to do with the fact that people from ethnic minorities in some areas have more of certain diseases. Yeah. So there are some people, say from Black African groups, who might have more high blood pressure, kidney problems. There are some Asian groups who've got more diabetes. But even when you take that out of the equation and say, okay, well, let's compare it to a group of white English people who've got those problems, still the black people do worse. So why is that? So you say, well, maybe it's where they live. Maybe it's because they live in big households. Maybe it's because they're poorer or they're in worse jobs. But even when you compare those things, there's still a difference. So nobody really knows the answer to that. And it's something, I mean, it's a really horrible thing, but it's something about discrimination. That's what I've come to believe. That, you know, whatever job you're in, say there are people who are doctors and nurses, but what we're hearing is that, say, black nurses feel that they're less able to ask for the PPE, the protective equipment.
Okay.
They just feel that, you know, if they ask for it, they'll be, you know, criticised by their bosses, or they might lose their job or whatever.
Okay.
So it's something about, this is my belief, you know, it is directly to do with that discrimination that people from ethnic minorities face. So whatever jobs they're in, they're going to be, on average, they're going to be in a worse position than the equivalent white person in that job. And that's, you know, that's a really horrible thing for us to admit as a society, that that's where we're at in 2020. Really shocking. But, you know, they haven't found any evidence that there is any sort of predisposing genetic reason why people from different ethnic minorities are more susceptible.
So it has to be an environmental factor.
It's something about environmental, social, really.
Okay.
That's what it's looking like to me. That's my conclusion.
I think that's what it looks like to a lot of people. When you look around. And obviously for a young person like me, when I see things on social media, you do see that kind of emphasized a lot more. Like people saying they're being discriminated against. So it's not just you, there's a lot of people that feel that way. Another thing I wanted to ask is, with the test, say someone wanted to get a test done, is it painful? Should they be worried about it being painful, or is it something simple? No. The actual test, I've brought some of the, I brought the little swabs, I can show you. Okay.
So, what you have to do is you, like, you know, Q-Tex that you use for cleaning your ear, but it's a little bit thinner. And then there's also a little bottle, which has got a bit of fluid in the bottom. Okay, so what you have to do the test, you do with the same swab. Where's my props gone? With the same swab, you swab the back of your throat first. So it's easy if you look in a mirror and you've got to look and see where your tonsils are. If you've got tonsils, so right in the back of your throat, so it's a big kind of right in the back, and you've got to swizzle it round your tonsils for 10 seconds. So that's a long time. So it's not painful, but it really makes you like
gag a little.
That's horrible. Okay, so then with the same swab, you then just blow your nose like on a tissue, or I've got a hanky. So just blow your nose lightly. And then the next bit, you've got to put that swab right up into the top of your nose, right to the back of your nose.
And that's with the same one?
And again, with the same swab, and twizzle it around for 15 seconds. So it's not painful.
But it's not comfortable.
But it's pretty uncomfortable. And you're not supposed to, like, when you put it in the back of your mouth, you're not supposed to lick it or anything. It's just got to be straight in the back and out. And then you open this up and you put it in like that. And it's got a little, can you see it's got a little tiny black mark on it?
Yeah, I can see that.
So it'll just snap where the black mark is. And then screw it up tight. And you have to, it's got space to put your name, the date, the time.
So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, name, date of birth. What I would say is the tricky bit is all the paperwork that goes with it. So because you can order a test and get a test done at home. If you can't get to a testing centre, you know, if you haven't got a car, really, how are you going to get there? Because you're not nobody's supposed to take you, because you're supposed to be isolating.
Yeah, that's another issue.
So you're sitting at home, you order this test, it arrives in a big brown cardboard package, and it's got this massive booklet with it, like a sort of, it's about like 10 or 12 pages with all these instructions what you have to do. Like, you have to go online, fill in your details online, get a code number, fill in the code number on the form, And then you've got to find a special post box, one of those post boxes that takes parcels.
Yeah.
Make sure you can get it to a special post box, or else you've got to order a courier to come and pick it up. So it's just fantastically difficult to do.
It sounds very difficult.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of the people in my community don't even speak English.
Yeah, so you just think, like, you know, how are people going to manage to do this? I mean, people do. There's loads and loads of tests being done. So the other way is you can go to a testing centre.
But that also comes with it.
So then you've got to drive there.
Yeah.
You've got to book your place, and then you've got to get yourself there. So if you don't drive...
And nobody can drive you because they're...
And nobody can drive you. Officially, they can't. I mean, you know, I know loads of people where their family member has taken them.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to get the test, really. But unless you get the test,
yeah,
you don't get into the test and trace system. You know, that's the only way into the system.
And that's enough to put a lot of people off in seeking this. Like, just look at the form and think, okay, I can't do this, I'm not going to bother doing it.
Yeah. So, you know, we absolutely need to encourage people to do it. But I think people need a lot of support to do it. You know, they need somebody who can help them fill out that form and talk them through it, encourage them to go there. You know, maybe order a taxi to take them to the centre or whatever.
Yeah.
And if people would phone up the Sheffield Community Contact Tracers early on when they suspect they've got something, then we could support them with that. Having said that, gradually the local authorities, the local public health departments are beginning to do more. So in Sheffield they've now set up another local testing centre where people can just turn up without an appointment. So they are beginning to make it easier for people to get the test done. So yeah, hopefully there'll be some progress.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But I think you guys are like great in that you're actually supporting people from the beginning till the end.
That's the idea.
Which is needed. Like you said, not everybody can actually do the form or you know, pick up the phone or even have the opportunity to just sit at home for 7 days because they've got other things going on. So that's great. And I hope you guys actually implement that all over Sheffield because it's needed.
We're trying. Yeah.
So we're at the end of the program now. Is there anything you need from people or from communities, or what is the next stage?
Okay, so we talked earlier about the fact that BAME communities are, you know, so much more affected by COVID, and we really want to take this project out into those communities. So in Sheffield, that's probably people in Broomhall, Darnall, Pittsmore, Burngreave, you know, those are the areas where we know have been worst affected by COVID. Okay. But in order to do it effectively, we will need to train up contact tracers from those areas. You know, if we go as a bunch of, you know, white middle class volunteers, we won't have that kind of connection and knowledge and language that we were saying earlier is so important. So we're really looking to those communities to come forward to be trained up as contact tracers, or even just to be community champions, you know, people who understand what the disease is like and support people. But to be contact tracers would be ideal. And then to spread the word in those communities, to say to people, you know, come forward as soon as you're worried that you've got the symptoms. You know, by all means go and get the test, but, you know, contact us as soon as, and then we can help you get the test and help you through this thing. So that would be my ask, and what the next stage is. Okay, so is that something that how would people contact you if they were interested in action? Okay, so there's a website, Sheffield Community Contact Tracers. You can just Google on it, that's what will come up. And there is a button on that website that if you press that, you'll get through to a little form that allows you to fill out. I mean, it's basically just your name and a contact number, and then somebody would phone you
Okay.
So at the moment we have got trained volunteers who would pick up those referrals. And I mean, it's a kind of research thing. There's only a few of us. We can't talk to everybody, but we'll talk to as many as we can. But the other kind of strand of it is to be trained up. So if people want to contact us and say, hey, you know, we're interested in doing this in our community, then we can offer the training to help other people pick up as contact tracers.
So they don't necessarily need to wait for you to gather a lot of people. They could just come to you, have the training, and actually start it in their own area.
I mean, that would be the ideal thing, really. You know, we feel we've got, you know, the experience of having done it in Meersbrook and Heeley. We've begun to have conversations in other places. I mean, really the reason I'm here is because I had a conversation with people in Ishrak. And met Yasin and now you. And we're doing similar sorts of contacting in Burngreave and in Darnall. So those kind of strands are beginning to get out there. And we just... The problem is that people in those very communities are so hard pressed. You know, people are just really, really struggling with what's going on. You know, like... you know, talking to people in Ishrak, you know, it's hard enough just getting food parcels to people and helping them with their employment issues and financial issues and so on. So if you kind of layer in another thing, now would you like to do contact tracing? It feels like it's asking quite a lot of people. But I'm sure there are people out there who'd be willing to take it on.
People around my age, young people would be interested. When COVID-19 kicked off, going to my Instagram, I would see a lot of people saying, how can I help? What can I do? So it might not necessarily be like the older people, but the younger people who have time in their hand might be able to drop food off or check up on someone.
And this is the sort of thing they could do as well. Also, I guess those younger people, it's not so long since they were in education, or they may still be in education. And if somebody's got, you know, they'll have good language skills in 2 or more languages. They'll have probably got some sort of science O-level, GCSE. You know, they'll have a bit of basic knowledge about how to do these things, which maybe the older people weren't. They're coming from a different place, aren't they? So actually just kind of, you know, being able to fill out a form and do a piece of research and collect information will feel much more familiar to somebody who's recently been at school or uni.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, there's probably, I mean, I'd love to have old people as well, but, you know what I mean? It's probably easier to train younger learn the people. Skills.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing everything with us.
It's a pleasure.